Probably the strongest build for Obsidian's new first-person RPG Avowed right now, especially on harder difficulty levels, is the Gunslinger build, which focuses on fast-firing dual-wield pistols to quickly take down enemies, combined with the powerful arquebus, aka the musket, as your secondary weapon to destroy boss health bars and build up a healthy dose of stun. Not only does this build pack a ton of firepower and quick damage options, but it has insane maneuverability, can easily avoid taking damage or reflect it back, and generally just remains untouchable, all while decimating groups of enemies from the back line. This is by far my favorite build in the game right now, so I decided to put together a build guide video which shows off everything you need to know to get started, including the best weapons, armor, and skills. As always, timestamps are provided if you need to skip around or rewatch a section, and don't forget to check out our written guide linked down below for even more details. With that said, let's jump right into it. So why should you play a Gunslinger build in Avowed? Well, honestly, it is one of the highest damage output builds that I've found in the game. For one thing, the only build that I can think of which may do slightly more damage for endgame content is a pure wizard build, but that's really due to their AoE potential, not their raw damage necessarily. The Gunslinger just really shines through not only their ability to deal precise damage, but also to slow down time, which I personally love how this feels in Avowed. Keep in mind that when you do slow down time using the right passives, you can also target weak spots, which are guaranteed critical strikes. So you'll be quickly 1- and 2-shotting everything on the map, and then like I said, it's also very easy to wear down bosses and max out their stun meter using our other main weapon of choice, the arquebus. This is also the kind of build that improves with some strategy. I mean, knowing which target to take down first, or how much damage each of your guns do so you can combo them effectively together feels very rewarding, and it's honestly just a lot of fun to play and to watch everything hit the floor in slow motion. In terms of defenses, not only is offense pretty much your best form of defense with this build, but you can fight for maximum range, and so enemies never really get a chance to even get near you, and if they do, we have several options for that. So if you're looking for a build to take on those harder difficulty levels in Avowed, including Path of the Damned, then this build is highly recommended due to that range component and your ability to avoid taking damage in the first place. As I said, there are several strategies we can use, or all of the above really, including rooting enemies in place, turning invisible, dodging, reflecting projectiles, and more. So we'll go over those more in detail in the skills section, but basically if you're looking for a build that's both powerful and also very fun and simple to play, then yeah, I think you're going to really enjoy the Gunslinger build. But let's talk about how to get started first with the best weapons and armor. So in terms of weapons, you'll want to pick up both a set of pistols as your primary dual-wield weapons, and then the two-handed arquebus as your big gun for chunking enemy health bars. That's your secondary weapon. Now for pistols, you can actually get one pistol as early as the prologue mission. If you decide to leave the smuggler in her cell, she'll actually come back to fight you near the end of the tutorial, and you can take her pistol for free after you defeat her. So a good pairing early for this build would be the one-handed pistol combined with whatever else you want to use, like a grimoire or just a basic shield, until you can get a second or a dual-wield pistol. And once you get to Dawn Shore, you've landed on the docks, you should actually be able to find the two-handed arquebus, which is essentially a long-ranged rifle or musket-style weapon. I got my first one from looting a chest in the shantytown next to the docks where you arrive, but there are several other options and ways you can get this near the start of the game as well. Once you have this two-handed weapon, this is going to be your main option for quite a while, as the arquebus does the most base damage of any weapon in the game, plus has that stun potential as well. So it's especially good for bosses, and you want to start upgrading it as soon as possible. So if you're looking for something to spend your upgrade materials on, prioritize upgrading the arquebus right away for even more damage and stun. And depending on your upgrades and of course your chosen difficulty level, you can now get a unique one-handed pistol called Sarek's Pride. It's very easy to find this, as its owner is located right next to the docks where you arrive in Dawn Shore, but the owner won't give it up for free. You're going to have to fight for this one. Now, on normal difficulty, I've been able to do this as early as level 3. The keys to success here are to use the arquebus, like I said, hopefully with at least 1 or 2 upgrades already added in, and then focus on the minions first for this fight. Definitely not the boss. Try to eliminate those extra enemies. Now, Kai may die in the process, but as long as you manage to kill 1 or 2 enemies, you can then run away and then rinse and repeat the process until only the boss is left. At that point, Kai should be able to tank the boss in a 1v1 situation while you chunk down her health and build up stuns from range. Just make sure to use the rocks for cover if she turns your attention to you, because you definitely do not want to get hit. Her attacks with this unique pistol do a ton of damage, plus they also shock you for even more damage over time, which is definitely deadly at this point in the game. Anyway, give this a try once you're ready, and you'll be rewarded with the awesome unique pistol, Sarek's Pride. This does the previously mentioned bonus shock damage, and it can be enchanted back at your party camp with another bonus effect, which sends out a lightning burst if you kill an enemy with it, which is insane for chaining that bonus damage in between enemies and knocking them all out with one shot. It is a great weapon. So by this time, you can be dual-wielding pistols and have that upgraded arquebus in the first zone of the game, so you're already extremely strong. But there is yet another unique pistol you can obtain in this first area, which is also quite good as well. You can find this one on a vendor in the city of Paradise, specifically Northern Paradise, located right here. This unique pistol is called the Disappointer, and I totally skipped it at first due to the stats, not realizing that when you enchant the weapon, the negative 10% attack damage stat turns into a positive 10% attack damage once you enchant it back at camp. So yeah, definitely do that as soon as you can. And now you have 2 upgraded and unique pistols for dual wielding. Keep upgrading your arquebus as well, and this is going to get you into the game's second zone quite easily, where now you can upgrade your arquebus to another unique weapon. This one is called the Last Trick. This unique arquebus does bonus splash damage to anything in the area, so it is a great upgrade for you. You get this one from the side quest in the second zone called Steel Resolve. By helping out the local ranger faction, I'd recommend you do this before progressing much into the main story, as it's going to make you even more powerful. But that's what I recommend in terms of starting unique weapons for an overpowered gunslinger build. But what about armor next? Well, early on, you'll definitely want to focus on either light or medium armor, as this is going to have the lowest stamina penalty, and you'll need to conserve that stamina to fire off as many consecutive shots as possible, especially when dual-wielding pistols. Now, anything here is really fine to start with, again, as long as it's not heavy armor, and eventually you'll be able to pick up the Valian Breastplate in Emerald Stair's main city of Fear, located in the Governor's House. This chest piece is actually pretty great for this build, as it gives you a 20% movement speed boost, which combined with some of our other gear will make us essentially untouchable in combat with a lot of mobility. Speaking of which, the Tranton family greaves, also obtainable in that second zone of Emerald Stair, are going to give you another 10% movement speed that stacks, plus 20% bonus dodge distance. So it's very easy to dodge back and to the side, out of the way of incoming attacks from melee enemies. You can combine this one with my favorite gloves, the Ingwithan Gauntlets, for a massive 20% critical damage boost. This is important because any targeted headshot you land in Avowed is an automatic critical strike, regardless of your actual crit hit chance percentage. In terms of accessories, the Tranton family talisman, which was also found in zone number 2, that increases your perception, which helps with improved range for your pistols and rifle. And then the ring of amplification is also recommended for another 15% bonus critical damage, plus the ring of the founder providing 10% damage boost against full health enemies, which is perfect for picking off single targets from long range using the arquebus. How to get these and more options can be found in the written guide, by the way, linked down below, so make sure to check that out when you get a chance. Moving on to skills next, and no surprise here, we'll be investing almost all of our skill points into the Ranger skill tree with just a few exceptions. But your first skill you want to unlock is going to be Tanglefoot. This is amazing because it roots enemies in place for up to 10 seconds. It's going to be great in encounters versus packs of enemies, especially at the start of the game, where Kai can really only distract so many enemies at once, and you're sure to have at least one enemy come charging at you. That's the perfect chance to use Tanglefoot to lock them down. Generally, only 1 point is all you're going to need here. Next, grab the Steady Aim passive, which slows down time when aiming down sights using guns and bows. This passive skill is very powerful, especially at rank 3, as this one slows down time by 75%. This is basically essential for any gunslinger style build, as it allows you to better aim and score those targeted weak spot attacks that we mentioned for bonus critical damage and stun. And once you have dual pistols, it feels really incredible to aim those shots separately depending on what your need is, or you can fire them off at the same time. It's really up to you. And if that doesn't finish off a target, you can then swap back to your rifle and immediately slow down time on that weapon too, getting another targeted headshot for even more damage. So yeah, an essential skill, get this and max it out to rank 3. Shadowing Beyond is a fantastic escape tool for this build, especially early on when you don't have a lot of movement and dodge distance while you're still gathering your gear, for example. This skill actually turns you invisible, so you can get away from enemies, get some distance, and then start firing off your shots again. Now, I don't personally play this as a stealth build for the most part, but you could do that as well if you want, especially by putting more points here into upgrades. And next up, the Marksmanship passive is incredibly strong, increasing your damage with bows and guns by 25% up to 50% up at rank 3. This is another passive you want to max out eventually for the most damage possible on the build. Next up, Power Slide does give you another situational defensive option that you can use to get out of trouble, John Wick style, by sliding through enemies, knocking them down, then coming out the other side, guns blazing. This skill is especially good when those melee enemies are running towards you, as you can use it to quickly take them out and then reposition yourself. But Quick Switch is another huge benefit to this build, probably the second most important skill overall next to Steady Aim, as this one speeds up your weapon swap speed at rank 1, letting you more quickly transition between the dual-wield pistols and the rifle, and then especially at rank 2, which has the unique effect of automatically reloading your inactive weapon after 3 seconds. So once you get to this point, this build is basically unstoppable, because if you learn to play with this passive, you never have to reload your guns during combat. Just fire your weapons, then swap, start firing that weapon, then wait at least 3 seconds before swapping back, and the previous weapons will already be fully reloaded. Hopefully this one does not get nerfed, honestly, in the future, because it is the ultimate in terms of a gunslinger style build, and it's extremely fun to play with once you unlock this one. Now, additionally, you could put some points into Sniper if you want. These can be helpful for downing a few quick targets from long range, as this gives you yet another bonus multiplier until targets know that you're there, basically. Now, in the wizard tree, I also highly recommend picking up Arcane Veil for the extra defensive layer at rank 1, plus the ability to reflect arrows and other projectiles at rank 2. It's going to be essential, especially at higher difficulties as well, because those ranged archers can do serious damage if you don't take them down quickly. So this is going to be a huge benefit in that regard, plus just the general damage reduction is very nice. Keep in mind that by putting skill points here, you do not need a grimoire equipped to cast this spell, and you can just add it to your quick slot bar to cast any time you need to, which again is a huge advantage for range protection on this build. Finally, in terms of the fighter skill tree, not much you need to take here. I would recommend Armored Grace, getting that one early, because that is going to reduce the stamina penalty of using medium armor, so at least 1 point there is recommended. Now, in terms of attributes for a gunslinger build, I would say there are probably 3 core stats that you want to focus on with this build. First of those is Perception, and this gives you greater maximum range for wands, guns, and bows. This is going to be important, especially for the pistols, which we mentioned. The dual-wield pistols are more of like a medium-range weapon. Sometimes, depending on your distance, you're going to be out of range with those, so this does help increase that. Perception also increases your critical hit chance for normal attacks, so overall, this is going to be a great stat for the gunslinger and really any range build in Avowed. And next up, Dexterity is also useful, particularly before you get enough skill points to unlock the Quick Switch passive for auto-reloading, as this does increase, the reload speed of your weapons. This is a huge help, obviously, if you're sticking with the same weapon, if you're like trying to fire multiple shots from the arquebus in a row, like in a boss fight, more dexterity is going to be a huge help there. And finally, the Might attribute is something you always want to be leveling up in Avowed, as this increases your overall damage output of basically all types of damage. So more Might equals more gun damage on this build, plus also more carry weight for hoarding junk. So it's really a great all-around stat to build up on your character. But as far as how to play the gunslinger build most effectively in Avowed, luckily it's an extremely simple setup. Usually I start by using the arquebus, as by default this is going to have the longest range, and it is a pretty significant difference over your pistols, which are more of a medium range weapon, as we talked about. So start with the arquebus, then try to down a few targets in a pack before they even notice that you're there. At that point, your companions should engage and become distractions, helping you to pick off everything else in medium range combat. As enemies get low, you switch to your dual pistols. At that medium range, you start picking them off one by one, using those well-placed headshots for critical damage and that elemental shock effect from the unique pistol. It's also fine to shoot off a few rounds here because your pistols reload faster than the arquebus. But if you need more powerful shots, go ahead and switch back to the rifle. Remember to use your crowd control with Tanglefoot to root any melee enemies that rush towards you, or use Shadowing to escape entirely if needed. And if you happen to be facing multiple archers, make sure to pop that Arcane Veil shield to reflect those arrows back at them. Do this simple process until all your basic enemies are dead. For bosses, you'll want to save them for last, having Kai set up to tank for you, so then you can just sit back, fire away. Again, I would recommend using the arquebus against bosses specifically because it packs the most stun, and you should be able to unleash a full stun combo in about 3 to 4 hits for maximum damage, and then just rinse and repeat. Like I said, it's a really easy build to play once you get everything set up. But with that said, that's going to wrap up our Gunslinger build for Avowed. It's definitely one of my favorite ways to play the game so far, and if you found this video at all helpful, do me a favor and crush that like button so YouTube knows to share this video with others. Make sure to check out the rating guide for the build as well, link down below for even more information on skills, gear, and progression. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you around in the next video.